Hey everybody, it is with great honor that I bring us today to our ending of the night, to our closing keynote speaker, Scott Goegebuer. I'm super honored and thrilled to have him with us here tonight with us, especially talking about this topic that I think is super important to the community and everybody out there. Scott, as you guys already know, has gone through some tremendous things in his life, as well as career, personal, and I really wanted to bring this story to you guys to light, essentially, so you guys can see what's been going on out there, because I know we just went through this hard time between the pandemic, and a lot of our brothers and sisters either committed suicide or left the industry and did other things. And Scott's story was just so powerful when I read about it that I wanted to make sure that we can get him on this show tonight with us and really express that you guys that no matter what's going on in life, there's always this triumph, there's always ascension, right? A kind of like rise of the phoenix moments where no matter what happens, if you are passionate and love what you're doing, and if you guys hone in your crafts, there's always work. It's always available. And you know what? Let the man talk for himself, right? So Scott, I'm gonna bring you on here. Scott, how you been, brother?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I'm glad to have you with us tonight. So how's your day been so far?
Been hard work. It's been a good therapy day.
So I want to real quick, for the audience who doesn't know who you are particularly, can you give us a little bit about your story, about where you came from, how you got into AV, and I will say we did see a little bit of what you did on the craft with Evolve. You gave a very good description there, but just to reiterate that for the audience tonight, can you just start? How did you get into AV? Is I guess that first question, right?
Completely by accident. I was working in a coffee, and one of my clients came in for a late night coffee for an editing session, and he was documenting the recruits as they went to the Los Angeles Police Academy. So I left the coffee shop and worked for him just for something new to try. Ended up enjoying it quite a bit. And one of his contemporaries did projection, and so we could work for him doing some bar mitzvahs, really low level stuff. But I learned how to be a projectionist with that. And then being in the Los Angeles area, opportunities came up and I just jumped on them and learned everything I could. And for the last 25 years or so, I've been one of the first called projectionists here in Los Angeles, Hollywood area.
And real quick, I just want to jump on that. Can you tell us what some of the projection jobs that you've done? I know you have a very impressive IMDb record, but I'd rather it come from you than me.
Yes, I've done 13 or 14 Oscars as the projectionist, the Emmys, the let me see, Grammys, MTV VMAs, Shark Tank, many TV shows like The One and The Voice, and countless other monstrous projection jobs, painting buildings all over the world, from Singapore to South America with Santana.
So Santana's, I'm a huge fan. I'm Latin myself, huge fan of Santana. I know of someone who registered right now, a really good friend of mine who's a big fan of Shark Tank. So I'm sure he's really loving to hear that right now. So I want to rewind a little bit here though. So you found the industry by accident, and you went from the coffee
Yes.
shop, right, to working for this gentleman, which essentially gave you a shot, right? What made you fall in love with projection? What was it that brought you out of everything else in AV? You were like, I'm going to do projection because this is the path.
Well, the one thing about projection, it's one of those things where you use your intelligence and you also get to use creativity.
True,
It's
true.
a little combination of art and intelligence. So that really was a big appeal to me.
Yeah, no, and that's fantastic. I definitely could say I've done a couple classes myself, and even with Clem, who's another presenter we had on the show, he was definitely talks about the art and the craft and the difference of it's not all about the science and the numbers, because some of it is visual. You have to use your eyes to really focus on what you're doing, and
Right.
when you're doing converges and blends. Any tips or tricks you'd have on projection that you could think of, right? I know it's very hard to say without being hands on, but when it comes to projection, what are some like key takeaways that you took when you were you know get into this top of your career, essentially, with what you're doing?
Keep it square. Rule number, that's rule
I
number
love that
one.
only because, man, the complexity of that is deep. Honestly, it's deep. And if once you get into projection, if you guys are doing this a lot, I will tell you when we've done classes with AV Educate that one of the things we focus the most on is that keystone and be able to see that. And that for a lot of guys is very hard because sometimes you think, oh, it's this or it's something else. And it's like the projector's not aligned perfectly to that square. and you're going from square to
Right.
square, right? So you need to align those things. And Scott,
And
that's
when you see the keystone, to know what you're seeing and what it means.
100%. Yep. Exactly. Especially when you're doing conversions and blends, to know which way to move that projector and which way to align it so that it's optically aligned as best possible. That's the
Right.
difference between being a projectionist and saying you know projectors, right?
Right.
So Scott, let's want to move forward. So you came into AV, you went to the projection route. You've done amazing things. You have an impressive record of what you've done so far, and then you have this medical something, right? And I haven't really told anybody what it is. So do you want to get into that a little bit of what happened and
Yes.
where and when?
Well, 2 years ago, I was thinking I was in control of my life. Everything was going well. My career's cranking along, and then May of 2019, I have a brain hemorrhage, which basically is a blood vessel bursts in your brain, and it caused a massive stroke, which
Got it.
knocked
Got
me
it.
down completely. Yeah. And emergency brain surgery to save my life to stop the bleeding inside my skull. And so I had to relearn how to stand and balance and walk again. And so by the time I got to the point where I could walk and I could think about going back to work, then COVID hits. And so I've been 2 years out of work basically, but hanging in there because I spent 20 plus years building a great career. And just last month I got my first job back in 2 years, and I was the camera engineer for an Earth, Wind and Fire concert at the Rose Bowl, which was a big deal, hoping that everything came back to my head after that long out and after the brain surgery. And it all came back and everything went really well, and it was a big triumphant return for me.
I love that. I love that. And especially there was an Earth, Wind, and Fire show. I mean, that must have been just an extra icing on the cake for you to come back and be able to do something like that. So I
Yes,
want to
especially at
ask.
my age.
Oh no, yeah. I want to ask real quick. What were some of the initial? I guess you know. I can't even imagine. I'm trying to. Can you paint me a picture of what happened? You were doing something, and then you had this aneurysm, and then you wake up, and now you're in the hospital. What were some of the first thoughts you
Yeah,
had when this initially happened?
it hit me while I was waking up in the morning, which I guess is real common for strokes. And when I came to in the hospital, they tell me that I had what's called a hemorrhagic stroke and that I had surgery. And of course, the first thing I think when they said I had brain surgery, I was like, so you could find it? And my
Right.
son said he was sitting there. He said that's when he knew you were okay when you made that jump.
And how about
And
your
then the
family?
first
So
thought
you
was,
said
oh
just
crap.
say that again. I'm sorry.
So when they tell you that you just had a stroke and you come out of it, the first thing you think is, oh crap.
Sterilization, right? So you wake up, your son's there.
Right.
You make a joke to kind of get moving forward. What's now like? The doctors and told you what's happened, right? And you're kind of aware of it. You're like, okay, I'm here. I'm
Right.
accepting this. I understand. What's the next steps? What were your thoughts next, and then what happened next?
Well, because of where the stroke was, it was in the back part of my brain, which is the cerebellum, which controls your balance and motor functions. So it didn't affect much of my cognitive abilities. So I was able to, except for the numb face, made some of the talking, but I didn't have any problem finding words or any of those kind of things. It didn't affect my thinking. It was just motor functions. So the hardest part was being stuck inside the head and not being able to tell people what I was thinking and feeling just because I couldn't make my body work.
Yeah. So smart,
So
smart, smart is attacking there, but the body's not reacting, and that's got to be like its own prison in itself. Like a mind prison.
it really is. It really
Yeah.
is.
I I can explain that, but I cannot imagine that. When I had COVID, I still was like fever, sick, and I was still moving. I couldn't imagine if I couldn't think and make my body do what I was telling it to do. And especially me being an ex-military guy,
Right.
I'd be in a whole other place. I don't know if I would be doing as good as you are. Honestly, I would have been. Oof. So, tell me a little bit about this rehabilitation you had to do because of the loss of the motor functions.
Well, the motor function was because that part of the brain actually had to get cut out. So the
Okay.
part of my brain that knows how to stand and how to balance and how to walk is gone. So I've had retrain my brain, and so it's been like a toddler having to relearn this all over again.
And is it a
And
muscle thing or is it a neural
well, different
connection
parts of your
pathway?
your it's a little both. Different parts of your brain will take when parts of your brain is gone, different parts will take over for it, but it's not the part that was designed for it. So now it's making new neural pathways to different parts of the brain, and so it's teaching those parts of the brain how to do it.
Got it. And what would you say so far was the hardest part when you had to reteach your brain, retrain yourself so far? What has been like the hardest kind of physical part for you?
Balance is my biggest challenge because the in your ears you have your vestibular system, which is a series of tubes which is kind of like your internal gyroscope.
Okay.
And when with me, mine, the one on my left side got disconnected from my brain, so it's trying to reconnect right now. And they said it's going to take a few more years.
Got it. Got it. I could totally track with that. And I totally get what you're saying there when it comes to that gyroscope. That was a perfect terminology. I totally got that. So let's fast forward a little bit here now, right? You've had an amazing career, 20 years in. You suffer this tragedy, and then you come out of it. You're learning to rewalk. You're learning to do these things, and then you're ready, right? You're ready to come back into the workforce, and then COVID hits, right?
Right
Now, what's going through your mind?
now I'm like, I'm here. But before I had the stroke, I was working so much. My wife and I were trying to think about ways for me to slow down a little bit because the kids are out of the house and I'm not putting anybody through college anymore.
Nice.
But this was an extreme slowdown that I didn't plan on at all.
So
So
what did
no,
you do?
it was just
Well, let's rewind. Maybe I'm too far ahead. What did you do between COVID hitting and after the aneurysm? What did you do to fill your time?
for myself. It was a lot of my personal physical therapy. Walking is a big deal to get balance back in the brain. I'll probably do 10 miles a day
Awesome.
and a lot of weightlifting to get my muscle memories and my muscles to do what I want them to do. And the biggest problem was it's social interaction for the brain. It's not doing puzzles and all the brain games that everyone says. It's being around people that keeps the mind sharp. And when I wasn't going to my physical therapy anymore, that's when I started to decline because I wasn't being stimulated by people.
Okay.
So during this, everyone was complaining about the Zoom calls, but during this time, I was doing a lot of Zoom calls with friends, and it's what helped my brain a lot. It was just social interaction kept my thinking, and then I was going over trying to learn things, trying to do some tutorial VMix just to keep the brain thinking and doing.
So this is amazing. I mean, essentially, Zoom helped you. We're saying here, and not Zoom in general, but
Yes,
the ability to connect, right? That was a huge deal,
right.
and I love how
It's
we
the
do it
people.
because the people, right? And that's exactly what we had originally started AV Tech Talks with. You can ask Ed or Chris or Disa or Scott, who helped us start this. We started this so that we could connect with our brothers and sisters in industry that had felt like they lost their way. It was a hard part. Man, I didn't think we'd go here. It was a hard thing for a lot of us, including myself. I was a director of an AV company, and I lost the job. And when I lost that, I lost some personal things as well with my family, and it was like I lost my identity overnight. 7 days
Right,
I was top of the world, making money, working on tour, doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden gone. And then 30 days later, like, oh, by the way, it's not just gone now; it's gone for the rest of the year. And then months or days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months turn into almost a year. And I, I gotta say, it was the same for us. We use Zoom as a way to connect to the guys that we missed working with. There's a camaraderie that's gone, and it's very interesting to hear your
yes.
perspective of that because it's different. And I never thought of it that way, where that social interactions is actually key, right?
Yeah, it was really key to the brain development.
That is awesome. That is amazing, actually. I'm taken back again by that because I never saw it like that. I just saw it as a way to connect with my friends so that I wasn't doing nothing. I'm a busybody, and you had a whole nother, connection with it
Yeah,
that
I learned it was more important than doing the studying and learning and stuff. All those things are important, but it was a social interaction that keeps the brain sharp and supple.
I like that. I liked it a lot. I might have to quote you on that one day. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and move forward here, right? So then COVID hits, right? And now you're ready. You've gone through this therapy. You've gone through this stuff. Your family's adjusted a little bit. You've adjusted. You've been self caring for the whole time. You've been improving your mental cognitive abilities, and then now we're at COVID times, and the prospect of trying to get back to work seems to have gone away. What do you do next?
Um, well, one of the things, fortunately, this happened right when my wife and I became empty nesters. So we didn't have the responsibility of having to take care of our kids at the time. So it was just us. So we were able to cut back on all sorts of things. So the first thing to go was the cable TV. So just more brain stimulation, just doing a lot more reading and getting online, just trying to find manuals on keeping my skills sharp and my knowledge base what it needed to be. I knew it was going to come back around. It was just staying positive was the toughest part,
I
and
like
then just
that.
bothering all my clients, telling all my clients I'm still out here.
This is a great segue here. What did you do? To segue. Some of the things like I've talked with another presenter we had, Jeff Woodgreen, was I just called clients and talked to them. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? How you been? Didn't talk about work. Just had a normal conversation. What were some of the steps you took with your clients and your colleagues and coworkers during this time?
That's how most of it started because a lot of people were calling just to see how I was doing personally because of what I was going through, just getting back on my feet. And then that segued into, are you able to, can you do work? I'm like, well, I can't climb ladders anymore, but yes, I can figure out how to run things. And so that just
Right.
became part of the conversation. And the biggest challenge is right now because I had a good reputation for doing big, difficult, hard things. And the stuff that's coming back first is the simple nuts and bolts jobs. And the clients are like, no, that's beneath you. We want to get you for the hard stuff. I'm like, don't ever say something's beneath me. Work is work.
Very true. Very true.
I don't have to paint the side of the Taj Mahal with projection to be happy to go back to work because it's about going back and being with the people.
Let's dive into that for a second. What is your thought process? Obviously, I'm hearing it, right? But what is the thought process we could share? Because I always feel like these conversations can open doors, right? Open the mind to different possibilities. But what would you say is your thought process when it comes to working? Because there are a lot of people that I know who they would think that way, right? Oh, I've been doing this for 10, 20 years. I shouldn't be doing that anymore. But you and me have similar mindsets where it's like, listen, it's work is work. I love this industry. I love I'm very passionate of it. um,
Right.
how can I better, just serve my community? And you just without a second thought was like, nothing's beneath you, right? What is something you could tell someone who's watching
Right.
right now to say to keep that mentality, right? Keep that vigorous curiosity always going. What kind of would be your 2 cents on that?
It doesn't matter what I'm doing for everybody. This is their Oscars. It's how I always try to be an award ceremony for a multi-level marketing company, but to them, it's their Oscar broadcast. So I try to give it that respect,
100%.
whether it really is the Oscars or it's Herbalife.
And for
To them,
you, it
it's their
really could be the
Oscars.
Oscars.
Yes. And so I try and give their show that respect because to them, that's the pinnacle of what they're doing, and it deserves
Right.
respect. And that's how I look at it.
Yep. Put your clients first. Show them respect. I like that a lot.
Right.
So we have COVID going on, right? you're communicating with your clients, you're talking, you're interacting with the community, you're staying active physically and mentally. What else are we doing during these
Right.
times?
I'm giving advice to a lot of people that are asking me for help, which I don't mind doing, but it would be nice if instead of having to give advice, I could actually do the work myself.
Oh,
But you do what
I've
you
been
can.
there.
Yeah. Forget if helping other people helps yourself. It's a very Zen kind of karma thing. It comes back around.
100%.
And just no matter what I'm doing, it's always about giving it all the effort. When I was first learning how to do the projection, even if I didn't know what I was doing, I did it as hard as I could. I read all the books, put all the effort into learning and all the effort into being there and being a good professional for my clients. And that same effort translated into my recovery. No matter what I'm doing, it's about putting in all the effort. If all I could do was stand up out of my wheelchair, I would do that 100 times a day. Because there's a lot of things you can't control, but I could control the amount of effort I've got. That kind of became my mantra. It's about the effort.
I like that. Control the amount of effort you got. I like that a lot. So I want to dive into something that you just said here. You said you read all the books and the manuals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. I'm a big fan of this. So
Yeah.
I want to dive in. As a projectionist, what manual or book did you read you thought was the most beneficial or had the most accurate information for you as a projectionist?
Christie's manuals has some good information on your color theory, on how to look at the chromaticity scale, which is the biggest deal for me with matching up projectors is understanding my chromaticity scale, my X and Y, which is how I color projectors. I don't do it with input balance. I do it with white point, X and Y.
Right. So and you're dealing with the light output, correct? You're dealing with the luminance,
Correct.
which changes the overall color when you adjust those colors, not just individual RGB, which is a digital change, not an actual change of the colors.
Right.
Yep.
RGB is the amount of red in a whole signal. When you're going into and dealing with the white point, I'm coloring with what the color of white is.
Which is what all
And in
color
the
is made out of.
right. Once you set your white point, the rest of the colors kind of fall in line. And that's how you can make those Christie Ds and those little Christie 10Ks look alike. Even though they have different lamps, is understanding their white point and setting them in a place where they both can reproduce the same basic color.
Just for anybody
And the
watching right
Christie
now,
projector manuals and the Christie projector manuals actually explain the chromaticity scale just a little bit. None of the others really do. It's one of those hidden things that nobody teaches you.
yeah, I was gonna say that is an advanced level tip right there for anybody who's trying to look for golden nuggets on the summit. That right there is gold when it comes to projection. That'll save you a bunch
Right.
of time when it comes to color correction. Doing it this way and taking the time to actually do whites. One of the things that I do when I do
Understand.
blending as well that I don't talk about often is when I'm doing a blend, I will do color balance on all black and all white so that I can get them both so that my colors look good no matter what setting it is,
Right.
whether the lights are bright or dim, it doesn't matter because I take the time to do that. And I'll usually raise my blacks a little bit so that blend zone looks a little bit better. Instead of trying to make my blacks look blacker, that's not gonna work. But that's a different
Right.
conversation. But that was the golden nugget right there. I gotta say my favorite projectionist manual was, um, which is a projector I've only used twice, but Digital Projection has a very good manual when it comes to keystone and corner correction, and I'm sorry, the physical optics of keystone and corner correction, so that it really breaks it down for you. And there is a visual which I wish I had ready here for you, but there's a visual which really helps me out, and I teach it sometimes. And what the visual is that it shows essentially you think of a box, and as keystone goes higher up, it does this. An image just shows a
Right.
box in the middle, and it shows up. So if you're seeing this type of keystone, you got to come down. You're seeing it this way, you got to come up. You're seeing it this way, you got to come this way. And that visual for
Right.
me when I was younger was super helpful, and it was just one of those like aha moments, like, oh, that's what you're looking for, got it. But without that
The little
visual,
aha
that cue,
thing, right?
right?
The little aha
And
thing that I've told people that if it's bigger, it means it's farther away. So if your
yep,
box looks oblong, that means the part that's bigger is farther away from the screen.
there you go.
That means that lens needs to flatten out and not be far. That corner of the lens need not to be as far away from the screen. It's a little simple thing about being flat.
Not as easy as we make it sound, though. It's what
But
makes us the bread
that's
and
the
butter for
basic bare
sure.
bones of it. Yes. If it's big, it's farther away.
Yep. And then even to the point of sometimes it's as simple as the screen isn't actually correct, and taking the time to make the
Right.
screen correct can actually save you time on the projector side.
Right. When you get those screens that are like a potato chip, those make your brain explode.
Oh yeah. Like my sides are here, but it's smiling here and it's frowning over here. I mean, hey, that's not my fault. That's the screen.
Right. And yes, there's some things I can do with some advanced geometry correction in some of these newer projectors, but I don't want to go into that if I don't have to.
Yep. I try to say optically as much as possible, 100%. What would you say now that we're here and we're just gonna nerd out for a second here? What is your favorite projectors? What are your like? Once you get these on site, you're like, oh, I'm good to go. Let's go.
Um, what I'm liking right now are the Panasonic RQs, those big 4K projectors that are the size of the 20,000 lumen machines.
Yep, 100%. Those panty lasers make a huge difference, especially when it comes to the coloring.
Yes.
The colors are great. The
Yes.
blacks are great. The optics inside are fantastic. The chips inside are great. I mean, Panasonic
Their
put their
new
work in.
lenses are much better than their older lenses.
Hmm. I would say the only problem I've had with Panasonic, the motors, and I think just because they're the ones that I've used have gotten a little bit older, but they'll, like
Right.
you'll go to shift it and it'll just like I'll stop and it'll go down one more pixel. And it's like I got to go up two and down one for it to settle into that extra pixel that it keeps settling into. That's the only problem I've ever had with them. Other than that, they're fantastic. And again, nerding out here, what'd you start with? Did you start with Panasonic? You start with Christie's, Barco's,
Proximus.
Proximas? Oh man.
Yes.
Okay.
Proxima
Man.
LCDs.
Proxima LCDs way back. Okay. Oh yeah, you got 20 years,
Way back.
20 years in the industry. Yeah. Oh man. So those you had to get right off the bat. And what's
Yes.
crazy? So one thing that
And
I
I've
used to
had to
teach.
converge those.
Oh, so my father's also a projectionist. If you could do the 3-tube alignments, you're an all-star. That you have mastered your craft. Those were the hardest to do. They were pain. They were pain. But those were, yeah.
Maybe when I was to the Christie and the Barcodes, I didn't want to level out my projectors with their feet because the 4 points, I like the jack screws because it was the better access. It was just up and down and this way, not the X between the right, front, left.
Yep.
It would just bring the nose up or down, lean it left or right, using 3 points instead of 4.
And just to give people this visual, I want them to paint a picture. This was you're talking about before the cages were invented, so the actual legs of the projector, not in a cage.
Right. Right.
Yep, which is all.
Then I
Which
would
causes,
I like to use the jack screws where they latch together. I use those for instead. Those gave me the points I liked.
Yep, that's a whole nother ball game right there. That's awesome.
That's knowing another level of how to converge and what your geometry is going to do.
Yep. I started with Barco's. I was in a Barco house for about 6 years, and those guys were again optically with the lamps were challenging. challenging
Yes.
themselves. I mean, compared to what it is now with the Panasonics, you got you got the cages. You can do an upside down one, and you got the Lang single point mounts now, which are, again, pros and cons, but makes it way easier than it was back in the day. So yeah, I mean,
Those are expensive mounts, but they really do a good job.
yep. And when I first saw them, I was like, "There's no way this is gonna hold the projector. This is a little." And I was like, "Nope, it did great." And
And
we
it does a
double
good
stacked them.
it does good work. Yeah. And now with the
It does good
lasers, I don't
work.
have to worry about that Z-axis thing in the lamp anymore.
Uh huh. Yeah. All right. Sorry. So we're nerding about projectors here, and we got to talk.
Right.
I know we're getting to the end of our talk here, but you did 20 years, have an amazing career. You suffer this medical tragedy, and then you do some self care, some self love. You connect with the community. You get yourself back to a point to work. COVID hits. Now we're ready to work, but there's no work available because there's a pandemic going on. So now we're
Right.
sheltered at home, right? You use platforms like Zoom and others to connect with your community, to keep engaged. You pick up the phone, right? You're not texting like most of us. Pick up the phone, make some phone calls, actually talk to people out in the real world, connect, tell them a little bit about what's going on, and then now let's fast forward to now we're near the kind of end of the pandemic, which is, I know it's still going, but work is coming back, right? So tell me about some of
Right.
that stuff. Work was coming back. You were getting some calls, and you take a job, right? Tell me about that first time back.
The first time back, I was a little nervous just because even though the stroke wasn't in the cognitive part of my brain, it's all interconnected. And I was afraid that all the information was going to be there as quickly as I wanted it to be. And I had a 4 camera shoot that I was coloring all cameras for, and it came back to me right away.
That's awesome.
And it was an exciting weekend, yeah. And I was wiped out for days afterwards because I hadn't used my brain that hard in years,
Nice. And
in
and
two
what you
years,
what
especially after.
2 years? Yeah.
Yeah,
And also your eyes, right? Now your eyes having to come back and look at that like I gotta make sure I'm looking at every little detail. I gotta make sure I'm looking at the whites, the blacks, the lumens
right.
levels, the chromiums. What was that like too? Like being on set and just like really focusing on these monitors and focusing on these cameras to get the best possible.
It was exhausting, and I remember it being much more effortless. But then that was before I had brain surgery.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, it was good to get back into it. It felt good to jump in there and just totally immerse into it. But it was exhausting. You get so out of practice, and the brain gets tired.
Right. And it's hard. It's especially when you're
Yeah,
doing a live show where if you missed it, you've missed it. The cue's gone, right? That's the
yep, it's
hardest part about
done.
all of what we do. So before I let you go, is there anything that you would like to tell the audience that's watching? Any kind of words of advice, words of wisdom? What fascinates me the most is that you went through all this, and amongst everything that happened, right, among it all, you still came back to AV. You still came back to this, which to me proves nothing less of amazingness, but the fact that you are truly this isn't just a job for you. This is a career. You're passionate about this, right? And no one can ever
Yeah,
question you about that. You went through something where you had 2 years of downtime. You still made it work. You still survived. You didn't just go somewhere else. So no one can ever question you on that. Right? You are passionate about AV. This is what you love to do. Obviously, you do amazing at what you do. What is something you could tell the community out there that's watching about, you know, passion, drive, motivation? There's so many ways we can go, but I'll let you take it and just tell us what is
that's a
something
big
that you
part of
take away.
what got me through my recovery was wanting to get back to work. Because at first I was thinking when I first wanted to get back to work, I was talking about how much I missed the people and but I didn't miss the travel. But now I miss the whole process. Just want to get back there. I liked everything about it. I actually enjoyed flying now that I think about it and being with the people. Setting up the show is the most fun part. It's when I'm getting to be with all the guys and putting everything together. And we're collaborating and thinking. And that's what motivated me to keep me working because I wanted to see all my friends. And if you can make it through this, there's work, and the people that are still around are the ones that's built a long career because we're in it for the long haul, and we made a big commitment to make a career out of this. And so those of us that have been at it for a long time are going to be offered jobs that we haven't done things as simple in a long time, but it's going to be work. It's part of rebuilding everything back again, and just take it as it comes and go and do the work and put in the effort. About the effort.
I like it. Well, Scott, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on here with us and talking to me today. I really appreciate all the feedback and the honesty and openness you've had with us about what you experienced, what you went through, how you went through step by step, and how you kind of came out of this better and stronger than ever. I hope that you have continued success in the future, and I really hope that we get to work on a show one day, because I, like you, am very passionate about this industry. I love this industry, and I love hanging out and meeting people just like you on a daily basis. But I will say it is a interesting, right? We travel the world to see beautiful ballrooms, but the people we work with, the people we get to hang out with, the shows we get to do, and the things we get to learn is next level, and it's you can't get anywhere else.
Right.
And it's gentlemen like you that reminds me of that all the time, that the people we work with are just amazing people. And again, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, my pleasure.
And again, Scott, I hope to see
Very
you on the
happy.
show in the real world, brother.
Thank you. Hope to also stay in contact. We'll talk later. Thank you.
For sure. And before I let you guys go, thank you for watching the AV Tech Talks first ever summit. I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Hope you guys enjoyed everything we had to share with you. I hope you enjoyed this talk with Scott, especially because it's empowered me to do better. And I hope you guys as well have learned a lot from this in general. And I hope to see you guys again in the future and on the road. And if you ever see me, just say what's up. You know who I am. Say hello and connect. See you guys next year at the next AV Tech Talks Summit.